Okay, so next up we have Candra McRae, and she's going to be talking about avoiding the blank stare, how to tell a great story with data. Over to you, Candra.
Good morning or afternoon, depends on where you are. As Lorna said, my name is Candra McRae, and we'll be talking about avoiding the blank stare and how to tell a great story with data. But before we get started, I just wanted to quickly kind of introduce myself with a little more detail. I'm a Seattle native and a Columbus transplant. I'm the founder of Lemotus, an analytics and experimentation consulting firm. And prior to that, I was the executive director of analytics and insights at Ramsey Solutions. I did finance at Georgia Pacific and cut my teeth in analytics at Deloitte Consulting. So according to the SBI, in the year 2000, the average human attention span was only 12 seconds. Fast forward to 2013, that dropped to just 8 seconds, which is lower than a goldfish. While this represents an interesting stat, it presents a sobering reality and a major challenge. The human attention span is quickly becoming the scarcest commodity. But this presentation isn't about trying to figure out the causes of this situation. It's about equipping you with the tools that help counteract this reality and find a way for your insights to resonate with stakeholders. So data has the power to transform how a company understands its customers and identifies new market and product opportunities. The insights derived from data are deserving of sunlight and action. Telling a good story with data can seem like a tougher task because for some reason, numbers freak people out. So let's not validate those feelings with bad data presentations. Let's start telling data stories in such a way that obliterates confusion, inspires, and empowers. So in this talk, I want you to leave with two things. First, a common sense data storytelling framework to make your insights get farther faster. Second, an understanding about how we can leverage the power of science to visualize these stories and make your audience happy. But before we get into all of that, let's have some real talk amongst us analysts. The way we in the data community have a tendency to present our findings can leave our audience confused, defensive, and wanting a shot of bourbon after we're done. It's like we all read a secret book that was a step-by-step guide on how to lose an audience in 10 minutes or less. So let's go through these all too familiar steps. First, someone comes to you with a question or a unique problem that the right data could help solve. Then you go to your data layer to figure out the secret of the universe, which is translated into you write a massive query, you spend a dog year cleaning the data, you figure out a cool algorithm for it, and then you throw it into Tableau to make it look pretty. Then, because you want to show your stakeholders how deep your knowledge goes on the subject, you regurgitate every fact, big or small, to your audience. In the real world, this usually looks like tables on tables of data, throwing out charts the way Oprah gave away cars, and trying to fit 90 minutes of content in the 15 minutes they gave you to present. Then, after you're done, you breathe, you look around, waiting to revel in all the nods of affirmation and delight. Instead, this is what you get, the dreaded blank stare. In an attempt to save face, your audience may fake understanding, tell you you did such a great job and how they need to spend a little bit more time thinking through all the wonderful information that you just shared, and then they file your analysis away, never to see light of day again. So what just happened? All of your hard work was wasted because people didn't get it. Of course, we can blame the audience for their inability to process information, but here's the truth. The reason why people don't get it has more to do with us than it does with them. So let's break this pattern. It sucks for you and the audience. Effective storytelling and data visualization can be the difference between success and failure, getting and keeping your seat at the decision-making table. So I've used a 5-step storytelling framework to help make it easy to get my point across and increase the likelihood for adoption and action. This framework was definitely learned in the School of Hard Knocks, as I have unintentionally skipped some of these steps and had some pretty epic fails in my career. So here are the five components. What are we talking about? What did you find? Why do I care? What should I do? And finally, what are my next steps? But before you get started and just jump into crafting a story, survey the scene for a second. Make sure you know your audience. This is critical. Knowing the audience will tell us how we'll tell the story. So Dell executive strategist Jim Strikeleather segments listeners into 5 main audiences. The novice, who's new to a subject but doesn't want oversimplification. The generalist, that's aware of a topic but looks for an overview and the story's major themes. The management, who seeks an in-depth, actionable understanding of a story's intricacies and interrelationships with access to data. The expert, that wants more exploration and discovery and less storytelling. And finally, the executive, who just needs to know the significance and conclusions of weighted probabilities. Next, you need to figure out is, where do you start the conversation? Do you need to start at once upon a time in a land far, far away? Or can you start at present day? And then finally, figure out what you want to happen from your analysis. Is this an inform, a call to action, or something else? So let's go to our first phase, which is, what are we talking about? So in order to figure that out, we need to be rooted in a firm understanding of the problem. I've noticed that the path to most data presentation crash and burn events start with a blurry understanding of what the problem is or the thing that we're trying to understand better. In doing so, let's try to avoid oversimplistic, broad, or 2-for-1 problem statements. If you're going to recruit support and resources to solve your problem, others have to understand the context and significance in order to support you. A simple way to help write your problem statement are the 5 W's. Who does the problem impact? What's the issue and how big is the impact? When does the issue occur? Where is the issue occurring? And why? Why is it important that we address this issue? So phase 2, what did you find? This is where the rubber meets the road. Analytics teams that I've led in the past can tell you that I always keep a ream of blank copy paper to storyboard, especially when I'm pulling together a presentation using data. I pull them together at the end like I'm building a puzzle, and I throw out the pieces that don't necessarily fit. So in order to do that well, here's some helpful hints that at least I've learned along the way. The first one is, you want to understand the data well enough to know what story to tell. But don't just stop at the data. Add in supplemental information to add more context, which is key. Know what you're trying to say. Outline your story's flow. Inject emotion and suspense and interest into your narrative when possible. Remember, you're communicating with humans. Ignore the data until the very end of the process and only then worry about specifically what's included and how to visualize your data. So get the story right and then weave in the data that supports that through your process. So this is also another one that I learned, which is, I heard this with the stakeholder following one of my framework violating presentations a few years ago. And the guy was like, Candra, I don't have a lot of time to spend interpreting results from a statistical model. I just need to know what time it is, not how to build a watch. What's going on in my business and what should I do about it? Consumers of models and analysis are decision makers and executives. While it's tempting to explain the technical expertise behind the model and to show off the analytical rigor, sometimes this is counterproductive. Present findings in easy to grasp ways. A simple gauge that I have is, could a stranger off the street lacking context understand the point that I'm trying to make? Complicated explanations, while they may impress your peers, are almost a guaranteed way to lose people or worse, intimidate them. So besides not going into unnecessary amounts of detail, visualize your findings to take advantage of the most efficient parts of our brain. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. It can also be the difference between people getting the gist quickly and you not getting past slide 2 without having to spend 20 minutes explaining what they're seeing. Put differently, seeing is fast, thinking is slow. So while I instinctively knew that this was true, I never understood why. So I did a little research on the way the brain processes information. The reason seeing is faster than thinking is due to what's known as pre-attentive processing, which is when the brain, bypassing involved conscious mental processing, reacts and draws cognitive conclusions based off of visual cues. So a fun fact is it takes 200 milliseconds to initiate eye movement, but a red dot can be found in 100 milliseconds due to pre-attentive processing. Some examples of pre-attentive features are position, color, size, and shape. So without even thinking about it, you can spot breaks in the pattern on this slide, and that's really pre-attentive processing at work. So here's a good example of how that kind of works is Anscombe's quartet. You can see based off of this data table, we did a sum, an average, and a standard deviation for every data set to prove the point. They are all indeed the same. But we can clearly look at the data table and see that the numbers aren't the same. So what's truly the difference in between the data sets 1 through 4? Now we can spend the next 5 to 10 minutes figuring out what this data table is trying to tell us, or we can visualize the information, and in a fraction of a second, you will know the difference among these data sets. You'll know this because the brain is a pattern detecting machine, and it quickly tells that stuff without going through all of the mental processing. And kind of like Heidi's presentation before this one, and just because I'm giving a presentation on data visualization and storytelling, I couldn't let the day go by without a public service announcement denouncing the use of pie charts. Yes, I could be accused of being a hater and picking on pie charts, but there's a really good reason based on science. There are actually 2 major reasons I'm not a fan of pie charts. First, humans aren't very good at figuring out areas, angles, or distances along a curve. And then second, comparisons are crazy difficult when segments and slices are close in size. Their only real use is to let people know what a fraction looks like. So let's just use a bar chart instead. Your audience will appreciate you. So let's bring in this data visualization soundbite home with a couple of tips. First, less is more. Eliminate unnecessarily long legends and opt for categorization, tick marks, and colors. Be intentional about color. Adding color for the sake of color is distracting. Understand the significance and limitations of certain hues, like red and green for colorblind individuals. 6 is the magical number. The human brain generally can only hold up to 6 things at one time in our brain. So be cognizant of that, where you don't give information overload and have them thinking about 15 different things, because maybe only 6 will stick. And then finally, mix it up. Avoid repetition fatigue. It is absolutely boring to see a page full of bar charts. You know, give us a line here and there. You know, like there's switch it up. Tableau gives us many options out of the box. Let's start utilizing them when they're appropriate. And just, some quick shout outs in terms of resources on storytelling and data visualization. One of my personal faves is VizWiz by Andy Kriebel, and he, along with Eva Murray, also do Makeover Monday, which is fantastic. Donald Miller's Building a Story Brand. It's really aimed at marketers, but it has a lot of great tidbits that translates well for storytelling with data. Stephen Few, who's the godfather of modern data visualization, and my personal favorite is Storytelling with Data, which is a great book, and it required readings for all the analytics teams I've led in the past. So, phase 3, why do I care? So this is completely a blunt way of saying what most people are thinking. People are me-focused. So being explicit on what this finding means for their bottom line or future performance and expectations is critical. This can be the emotional hook and preempt the inevitable, so what? If analysis just flatly presents the findings without adding more color around implications, that emotionally resonates with someone's goals or aspirations. The findings, no matter how amazing they are, can fall on deaf ears. So I use this with my own teams in the past, so much that they have actually made hilarious videos doing impressions of me asking why, or why do I care? So how to kind of how to tie your the emotional tie here is a good example is maybe you want to reach more people, right? Especially if you're in a marketing organization. higher productivity if you're manufacturing or something else like that, or sales. And then finally, the bottom line, right? How does this problem or data story actually cause me to drive forward my goals or to stay in business if it's, up to that? So phase 4, what should I do? By this time, you got them. You've done the emotional hooks. They're emotionally invested in what you've told them so far. Maybe they're intrigued, angry, fearful, convicted. You got them. So now you can let the moment pass and allow what I call unsupervised thinking to take hold and let them figure out what the recommended path is. Or you can make their lives easier and reduce the barrier to action by taking that extra step and advising what you would do if you were in their shoes. So the key when making recommendations is always try to have more than one option, but make it very clear on which one you prefer. So when you present more than one option, it shows your stakeholders that you have taken the time to consider the alternatives, weighing the pros and cons, and that your recommendation is an outcome of a very thorough assessment. And finally, the last phase is, what are my next steps? So this is similar to phase 4, but this phase is centered around the immediate tactical steps to put the recommendation in motion. This is where you put your project manager hat on and you figure out what needs to be done walking out of that meeting. So from identifying the meetings that need to be set up and with whom, to which approvals are needed and when. Consider this the tactical execution component of your data story. Please note that this isn't supposed to be some exhaustive list with like 80 million bullet points, just 2 or 3 tactical things that can be done to put the recommendation in action. So if you answer, what are we talking about? What'd you find? Why do I care? What should I do? What are my next steps? Your audience and your stakeholders will look like this, hopefully, right? Probably not as a standing ovation unless it's amazing. They'll not only still be paying attention, but they'll be empowered and equipped to take action. And that's a lot better than this, which is someone trying to figure out, why mac and cheese are still best friends, even though you've probably presented something amazing. So with that being said, thank you so much, and I am open to any questions.
Thanks, Candra. We're just looking to see. Sorry, there we go. So Charlie says, can you just let Candra know that she has been fantastic, please? Really great presentation.
Oh, thanks, Charlie.
Not much of a question, but we'll take it. Righto, any other questions or beautiful comments for Candra? Emily says you killed it.
Thanks, Emily.
Righto, so where are we at? We are gonna have Diliana coming up at 4:10. Sorry, not 4:10. Am I reading that right? 4:10, yes, 4:10. So yeah, we're gonna take a break and we will be back at 4:10. Thank you.